Look at the modern skyline of St. Louis. It is the 19th largest metropolitan area in America and known as the Gateway to the West. The city has a richly documented past. It started in 1764 as a French fur trading post, and 4 decades later, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark used it as the launching pad for their expedition into the Louisiana Territory. But if you ask a local a very basic question about their home, you will often get a blank stare. Who exactly is the St. Louis? Looking at this historical lineup, it's confusing. France had 18 kings named Louis, but only one was canonized. Louis IX lived a life of extreme contradictions. He reformed medieval law to protect the innocent, yet he also waged catastrophic holy wars. To figure out what the founders of this American metropolis were thinking, we have to look closely at the messy, complex reality of the man they named it after. Louis was born in 1214 and inherited the throne at the age of 12. From childhood, his mother, the formidable Blanche of Castile, acted as his regent and shaped his entire worldview. She raised him to be intensely pious, and under his reign, the House of Capet entered a golden age. France reached the absolute peak of its military and economic power in Europe. But Louis did not behave like a typical medieval monarch. Every night in his own home, he would personally serve meals to dozens of impoverished citizens, and he would only eat their leftovers. He poured the royal treasury into public works, funding vast hospitals and commissioning breathtaking Gothic architecture across his kingdom. His devotion extended to highly prized religious relics. He spent a fortune to secure what was believed to be the crown of thorns, and he built massive chapels specifically to house it. This strict personal code eventually reached the legal system. Louis abolished the practice of trial by ordeal, the brutal custom of putting the accused through physical torture to prove their innocence. In its place, he brought back the old Roman standard of innocent until proven guilty. When settling disputes in court, he notoriously listened closer to the poor, reasoning that the wealthy already had plenty of people speaking on their behalf. By reforming the courts and giving up royal luxuries to feed the hungry, Louis established himself across the continent as the absolute model of a just, charitable Christian king. But that same religious devotion had a dark edge. Louis criminalized behaviors he saw as sinful, handing down severe punishments for gambling, prostitution, and blasphemy. His rigid worldview soon turned against minority groups. He expanded the power of the Inquisition in southern France, targeting members of a Christian sect known as the Cathars. He also enforced brutal policies against Judaism. Following a state-sponsored disputation, Louis ordered the destruction of thousands of copies of the Jewish Talmud, burning them in massive public fires. Then, in 1244, he nearly died of a severe illness. When he miraculously recovered, he took it as a direct sign from God that he needed to launch a crusade into the Holy Land. He targeted Egypt for the 7th Crusade, and it was a complete disaster. Most of his army was destroyed, and Louis himself was taken prisoner, forcing France to pay a massive ransom that directly enriched the enemies he had set out to conquer. Decades later, despite being older and in poor health, his zeal remained intact. He launched an 8th crusade against Tunis, where disease ravaged his camp and ultimately killed him in 1270. The empathy that reformed the legal courts and the violent zealotry that destroyed his own armies sprang from the exact same source. His singular religious fervor fueled it all. This dynamic illustrates a dangerous truth. A single-minded devotion to a cause can create immense compassion for anyone inside your circle, while remaining brutally exclusive to anyone outside of it. 500 years later, in 1764, Pierre Laclede and Auguste Chouteau arrived on the banks of the Mississippi River to build a new settlement. When they decided to name their little trading post St. Louis, they were not looking to honor a failed military commander or a man who burned books. To a French citizen in the 18th century, the patron saint of France stood for something highly specific. He represented an era of incredible prosperity, monumental culture, and the idea of equal justice for everyone. They were stating an aspiration. The founders stripped away the destructive, complicated flaws of a medieval king so they could fully harness the pure, perfect ideal of the saint. History has a habit of filtering out the messy reality of a human life, leaving behind a clean symbol. When you look at the city of St. Louis today, you see a name that serves as a centuries-old blueprint, a hope for a just and prosperous society that people are still striving to live up to.